Hello everybody, welcome back to Cure for the Common Game. Today we're going to do the 100th deck. I've been working on this deck for a very long time. Years and years. Ever since I found EDH, I thought it'd be a cool thing to do a deck of the Weatherlight Saga, because so much of it, especially in the early days, was portrayed in cards. Now I want to take a brief moment to thank y'all for watching. Last year I flipped on the camera. I didn't even know if anybody would watch these. It's pretty much a exercise for me, but people seem to like it. I enjoy doing it. It's good. Anyway, it's the Weatherlight Saga, and it actually took place. It is the central storyline in all of Magic. Some people would argue or would say that the Weatherlight Saga is over. The storyline has been completed. We're on to different stories. However, I have a different theory. This is the single storyline in Magic. Everything that we know about this game, from beginning to the last set, all the way to Amonkhet, is part of this storyline. Now, there are literally thousands of cards that represent moments and characters. So I tried to hit the highlights as much as I could. This is not a good deck. I haven't played it, obviously, but I don't think this is deck form, so there are lands, and there are removal spell, whatever, but it is what it is. I did the best I could. I'm a huge Vorthos at heart, y'all know that. I include cards in decks just because of the flavor. Here we go. Well, let me try to get this right. We're going to be looking at cards, so let's get a good focus going here. Okay, a long time ago in Dominaria. Dominaria is, for those of you that don't know, Dominaria was the plane that Magic started on. And the reason why Magic started on the plane of Dominaria is the center of the multiverse. There are supposedly infinite amounts of planes in the multiverse. To get to them, you planeswalk through the Blind Eternities, which is nowhere. It's literal nowhere. But anyway, Dominaria is the center of it. Now, Dominaria has the ley lines of mana and exist everything all tie back into Dominaria. Now, we didn't know that for years, but we're going to start off with it. And a long time ago in Dominaria, there were two brothers, Urza and Mishra. I'm using Urza's armor to represent Urza here because they never printed an Urza creature card, with good reason. Urza did a little bit of everything. To Mishra, well, okay, we'll start from the beginning. They were young brothers. They were archaeologists working under the master archaeologist Tokasa. And one day, they were out spelunking, if you will, in the caves of Koilos. Now, and which really bothers me. This is not a legendary land, as pivotal as it is in the story. Now, in the caves of Koilos, they found an altar, if you will, a big lock, or a big thing with a giant power stone in it. Now, at this time, power stones ran everything. Power stones were their central form of energy or power at the time. It ran all of your artifacts and things like that. Now, the power stone that they found was huge. It was the largest one they ever seen. It was enough power to power everything till the end of time. Now, so being what they did, the brothers pried it apart. They wanted it. I got to have that power stone. So they pried it out of its base, and it broke in two. And when it broke in two, it turned into the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. Now, each brother took half. Urza took the Might Stone, which made artifacts stronger, and Mishra took the Weak Stone, which made artifacts weaker. Now, obviously, both of them wanted the other half. Both of them would not give up the other half. So this began the Brothers' War. The Brothers' War lasted for a long, long time. I want to say centuries. Now, what had happened was the Power Stone that broke into these two pieces was actually a lock put in place long ago to keep out, to close the portal between Dominaria and Phyrexia. It was created long, long ago. There was a guy named Yawgmoth. By the way, Yawgmoth, not a planeswalker. And by them taking this Power Stone out, it allowed Phyrexia to come back into Dominaria. Now, Urza was a good guy. He did a lot of things. Sometimes the things he did were questionable, selfish, whatever, but he had he had the eye on the prize. He had a bigger goal in mind. Mishra was seduced by the power of Phyrexia. So, obviously, one went one way, one went the other way. And it became Mishra's goal in life to defeat the Phyrexians. Now, this would last, as you know, the history of the entire game of Magic. Long story short about the Brothers' War, they were fighting. Every place they fought, they just razed to the ground. They found an island. Urza found it first, and then an island, because you need resources to build these war machines. Now, Urza felt kind of personally responsible for this, so he didn't want to endanger lives, so he created artifacts to fight, and as you know, Phyrexia is pretty much Phyrexia is the Borg anyway. So they found this continent of Argoth that was untouched, and it had all this forestry, and they sent the lumberjacks there to get the wood and fires and war machines and all that jazz. Well, the final battle was held there at Argoth. It had gone on many, many years, taken millions of casualties. The Brothers' War was horrible. Now, everybody has henchmen, of course, and Urza's henchman was named Tawnos, and Tawnos gave him the Golgothian Silex. Now, in this last battle, when Urza realized that Mishra was now more machine than man, and they were pretty much going to do the Alpha Strike. Mishra was, you know what I'm talking about. This ends here now. Urza was at his wit's end, so he sat down and filled the bowl with memories of the land, which is the instructions he was given with the Argothian Silex. Or Golgothian Silex, my bad. The Golgothian Silex exploded in his lap. Essentially, he set off a thermonuclear bomb in his lap. Now, that ignited his Planeswalker spark. As you know, something has to ignite your spark. I think 1 in a billion have the spark, and another one of those billion actually get the spark ignited. Whatevs. So the Golgothian Silex sends him into Planeswalkerhood. As a side note, Talnos lived because he jumped in his coffin. Card not shown because I don't have it. And when he was walking off of Argoth, he noticed a few snowflakes. What had happened had brought about the Ice Age. Now, all of those following sets tie into it retroactively. Urza realized that he needed a plan. He needed a plan to defeat the Phyrexians, because this didn't do it. This killed the ones there, but now, because he did what he did with the Silex, the Might Stone and the Meek Stone became his eyes. They just became his eyes. So it stands to reason that Mishra is dead, although that is yet unconfirmed, and it's been a million years. So his plan was to create a legacy, if you will, a amount of artifacts, a certain collection of artifacts that when put together would be the ultimate weapon against Phyrexia and would defeat Phyrexia once and for all. The pieces I'm showing you now are pieces of what is called the Legacy. And Squeezy Toy is one of them. Each of these had a specific purpose, but with everything else, it was there are some of the parts, or the whole is greater than some of the parts. Now, he created Karn because he had this huge idea, Urza did, and he started messing with time at the Academy at Talera. Now, obviously, I'm not playing with Talera Academy because it's banned in EDH. By the way, that guy's banned too. He's part of the story. But, oh, and got that one signed in 08 by Richard Garfield. Anyway, different story. The reason why he created Karn is he was trying to get a golem that could withstand the rigors of fast time and slow time, because the idea was he created slow time because it would take years to make these war machines, and he didn't have years to spend on each one. So he would create slow time pockets, and in our real time, one would pump out like every minute, but it took 4 or 5 years apiece. Silver was the only substance that could do it, could move back and forth unscathed. Now, at the Academy there, he had a good friend of his, the Master Wizard Baron, running the whole school. Baron's wife was Hannah, was Rain. They had a daughter named Hannah. We'll get to her in a minute. And they ran this academy. Now, shit, my mind went blank. I'm doing all this from memory, by the way. I'm not reading shit. They ran the academy. But, so Urza had like all of this, all of these pieces, but he realized he needed a human component, a catalyst, if you will, the central piece to bring it all together. And he come up with the Bloodlines project. He controlled the bloodlines, essentially the breeding of everyone in Dominara for 20 generations to get to one guy, Gerard Capashen. Several ways to pronounce that. That's how I've always pronounced it. Now, Gerard, of course, your reluctant hero. He was raised, he was trained in all the martial combats. He was a very good master at arms. Whatever martial weapon he could pick up, he was very proficient at. Now, he also made Karn. Oh, I covered up Karn, didn't I? He made Karn when Jared finally came about. He made Karn Jared's sole protector. That was Karn's job, to protect Jared, because you don't want nothing to happen to the guy you spent all this time trying to get. As a kid, Karn was always there. Now, Urza put a memory cap on Karn to where he could only remember, because Karn is immortal. He could only remember the past 20 years because Karn had seen things and he had known a lot of them. So every day Karn woke up, every day that began, a day 20 years ago was pushed out. Now, Karn had a really, really good friend named Jorah. We're going to get off on this tangent real quick. No, there's many tangents here, but this one's worth discussing now. Years ago, Karn had a friend named Jorah. By the way, Jorah in this picture is 900 plus years old. She drank essentially from the Fountain of Youth, so she doesn't age. She will perpetually look 19. But Karn and Jorah were very best friends. But when Jorah left the picture to go do stuff with Teferi later on, Karn got in the habit, because he knew he had this 20-year cap. He knew he had this memory cap. So every night before he powered down or logged off or went to sleep or whatever the hell Karn does, he would say, Jorah is my friend. And after so many years, so many millennia, or so many centuries, he could not remember who Jorah was. He just remembered that he always did that. There's a part of me that just, that's sad and touching and everything. But anyway, back to Gerard. So, Urza had built this planeswalking ship called the Weatherlight. Now, the Weatherlight was grown out of a single seed that he had gotten from the Maru sorcerer Multani. Multani actually later would actually imbue his spirit into the actual Weatherlight. So when they were in battle and they took a blast, Multani would just, the ship would heal because it was Multani's spirit in it. Amazing. So, as with every ship, the Weatherlight needs its bridge crew. So, you have Gerard, which was he's the heir to the legacy. Now, he's the reluctant heir. He really don't care about this shit. But Gerard does kind of care a lot about his little sweetheart, Hannah. Y'all remember, Baron and Rain's daughter. She was the ship's navigator. And through several books and several storylines, they drive around and they get their crew, if you will. Now, you got to have your first mate, Tongarth. He's the Klingon, or the Minotaur, rather. And he is, hell, he's as Klingon gets. He's all about honor and, being a warrior and stuff like that. You have Miri. Now, Gerard and Miri actually trained under Morrow way back in the day to learn about, tree hugging, hippie fighting. I don't know. It was Miri, Gerard, and Ro. But Ro got exiled, apparently, because Wizards of the Coast don't like really, really, really fast mana. Anyway, so Miri's on the crew. And, of course, you got to have your ship's doctor, which is Beverly or Orem here. Now, the cabin boy Squee, yes, there's a goblin on board. We'll get to why Squee has this ability, because for years, that's a damn glare and a half. For years, we had this card and did not know why Squee couldn't die. We'll get there. You got to have a magic user. So they actually wanted Baron to go with them, because what had happened is Captain Sisay was captured and taken to Rath by Volrath. Volrath, one of the pinnacle bad guys, and I can't deal with this freaking glare. Damn it. Taken to Volrath, or taken to Rath by Volrath. There, that's a little better. By Volrath for unknown purposes. Well, we all know why. Now, Volrath was the Evencar of Rath. Evencar is what they call the evil guy who's large and in charge. Now, also on the crew, since they were going to Rath to try to, that's what got Jared on board, is that, oh my gosh, my friend Sissay, they got her, OMG, let's go save her. So they also got Krovax. Now this is the Krovax card. Obviously he is cursed. He is from a little place you might have heard of called Urborg. Now, Urborg, pretty nasty place. Krovax is actually a nobleman. He is Krovax Windgrace. That's right, from Lord Windgrace, the old planeswalker that died. So, they needed somebody who knew all about Rath. Now, Rath, that's where Stark comes in. Stark has a daughter, Takara, who he wants to save as well, so that kind of gives him incentive to help them. So he joins the crew to help them. Now, obviously, Stark of Rath, kind of the traitor. We're going to call him Ensign Rolaren, or Ensign Ro Stark. Now, Krovax's family was guarded. Their guardian angel was Selena. By the way, all of these characters and all of this has I could do a deck on each character and all their storyline, but Selena abandoned the Windgrace family to go work for the Volrath. Now, so they wanted Baron to go with them, and Baron's like, nah, fam, I got stuff to do. I'll send my, little guy Urza with you. He's pretty good, right? So, they go to Rath they all board the ship, and they use the planeswalking engine to planeswalk to Rath. The only problem is the planeswalking engine busts, and when they go through, they find this big portal. A planeswalking portal. This is the Phyrexian portal, by the way. And they're like, well, we're going to go in, we're going to get Sissay, but this portal seems to be broken, and Urza, we're going to drop you off here so you can hold the portal open, you can use your magic, hold the portal open, and get us out of here, because this ain't going to take long. Well, guess what? It takes a while. So, immediately after they get out of the airspace of the portal, they are greeted by the IKC Vorcha, or the Predator flagship. Now, the Predator flagship is run by Commander Driven Ilvek and his trusty henchman, Vadi Ildal. Now, Vadi Ildal, obviously, everybody remembers, at some point in time, Grievin actually gets pissed off at Vadi Ildal and throws his ass overboard. Not long after, Jared falls overboard. But he don't die because his fall is broken by the Skyshroud Forest. Now, through a period of time in here, stuff happens. And Krovax has to kill his guardian angel. He has to kill Selena, which fulfills the curse and just turns him bananas. Now, while they are in Rath, they meet people like Chomano and Iladamri, the whole core, all of the Vec. We know the core are there. They don't belong there. They were transplanted there. Meanwhile, what they find out about Rath is an artificially created plane. It is made of flowstone. It was artificially created by the Phyrexians. What for, you ask? Because this is actually one of the greatest plots I've ever heard in a story. The idea is, if you are going to take over a world, and you obviously want to take over Dominara, specifically, because Dominara is the center of the multiverse, you control the heart, you control the body, that kind of thing. So the idea was, we're going to make Rath, and we're going to spend however long it takes millennia, I guess, to just build armies and ship armies to Rath with the idea of that being the staging ground for the invasion. How so, you ask? The plan was a planar overlay. Now, this is clever as hell, because if you're going to invade something, like via a portal, you know, as soon as shit starts pouring out of that portal, it don't take people long to figure out, hey, close that sumbitch up and we're good. No. The purpose of Rath was to be overlaid on top of Dominara. So you've got like farmers in the field and they're farming, in Dominara. And when they lay Rath on top of Dominara, all of a sudden this farmer, bam, you got Phyrexian negators in your face. So it's instant and it happens. It is an instantaneous invasion, which is beautiful. Okay, while we're back still in Rath, and Krovax, or Volrath, has some. The Dream Halls is very, very important storyline. I've got it in there because, let's face it, we're playing 5 colors. And, I for deck purposes, I do need a way to, cast my damn spells. They capture Karn. They capture Karn. Now, a long time ago, Karn killed someone accidentally in defense of Gerard. And he felt so bad about it that he swore to never kill again. And that is why Karn is a pacifist. Now, he kept this up for a long time. So when they went to capture Karn, they didn't really, Karn he's a golem made of silver, so he's impeccably strong. But that is why the Karn card, when it gets in combat, it automatically has a 0 power. Anyway, so when they went to capture Karn, they got Karn and they got Yawgmoth. They fucked with Yawgmoth hardcore, twisted it and demented him. But Karn, they abused pretty much psychologically, as we see here in propaganda. Now, so Karn and Tongarth, the bad guys, have them. Well, all of a sudden, they've got Teferi, or they finally get Sisay and Tongarth and Gerard back. They get them on the ship, and they're like, okay, let's GTFO. So they head back toward the portal, where Urtai is there. Urtai holds open the portal, and poof, they go through. Well, guess what? They leave a couple behind. They leave Krovax behind, and they leave Urtai behind. Now, there's this big power struggle on Rath because Volrath has vanished. What has actually happened is Volrath is a shapeshifter, and he took the form of somebody else, and he's on the ship now, and he stays that way for a couple sets, and we don't know it. But anyway, they leave these two behind. And there is a hot race for who's going to be the new Evencar of Rath. Now, obviously, we know who wins that. It's Krovax here. But Urtai was kind of touched by the Phyrexians too. Krovax was completed, and Krovax, as a gift to Krovax, here's where we get back to Squee. As a gift to Krovax, Squee was left on Rath as well, by the way. I forgot about that. Krovax has just an uncanny ability to control the Flowstone, which is, kind of trademark number 1 of being the Evencar. So he just, with a single huge hand, just splats Squee. So Squee is just laying there in a bloody pile, and Krovax just laughs and says, "Oh my God, that felt so good. I wish I could do that every day." and poof, Squee pops right back up out of the ground like daisies. And Krovax realizes that this is a gift from the Phyrexian gods, that he will be forever able to kill Squee. Squee just keeps popping back up. So that's why Squee is a little on the immortal side. So, Krovax also is the original, what we used to call the Black Wrath in the years before Damnation existed, was Massacre. It was beautiful, and we all loved it. So, we get back to they go to Mercadia, where goblins are held in very high esteem, and we're gonna so at a point in time, Yawgmoth actually, Urza takes a team of walkers into Phyrexia in like mech suits, and they try to take over the place. A lot of them die. They get out because, oh my gosh, a lot of them die. Well, Phyrexia has this idea, or Yawgmoth, that he is going to make the two champions fight. So he gets Urza and Gerard and puts them in the Phyrexian arena, card not pictured, and makes them fight to the death. Now, this does not seem fair, because back then, planeswalkers were almost godlike. I don't know that the gods had as much power as planeswalkers had back then. They could create worlds. They could create life. They could do literally anything. So, in the Phyrexian arena, all of Urza's planeswalker powers were null and void. For the life of me, I don't know why Yawgmoth just didn't kill him then, but anyway. So, Urza and Gerard have this fight to the death. Obviously, old man versus master at arms. Jared wins. He cuts off Urza's head. No big deal. Urza's so powerful that he really doesn't need his body. So his head is still living, still with the Might Stone and the Weak Stone as his eyes. And he's carried around in actually Urza, or in Karn's chest, just, in the holding pocket there for a while. That'll be important later on. So we go back. Let's go back in time a little bit to the Tolaran Academy. Baron runs it with Rain, and Rain dies, but now, and that's rough on Baron. But when he finds out Hannah dies, that's I mean, you're talking to dad that's just lost his wife and his daughter, and oh my gosh. And so he starts to blame Urza. And he's like, this is your fault. She was in love with your boy. She was going with your boy, and it got her killed. And Urza was like, I wouldn't have picked anybody better. And that's when Baron realizes that he was part of the Bloodlines project just to get to Hannah so that Jared would have a love interest. And Baron loses his mind. The card Obliteration, he just nukes the island. Now, when he nukes the island, keep in mind, there's fast time, there was slow time, and all of these time bubbles just get uncontained and they start floating around, and it was very, very just unstable, and shit just goes down, and these time bubbles start floating around. Well, he had a very, very promising student named Teferi. And Teferi, by the way, if you want to look up Disruptive Student, that was Teferi. A burning piece of shrapnel, I guess, hit Teferi and knocked him back. In our time, we saw him burn for seconds. But it was in a pocket of slow time. Teferi actually burned and was on fire for years. This ignited his Planeswalker spark. So Teferi had a different idea on how to deal with the Phyrexians. His idea was phasing. What he was going to do, he got him and his, as you all know, they all have henchmen. You got to have somebody to hench for you, right? So his henchman was Jorah. Now, what he was going to do is, Jorah's home place was the Gitu, and his home place was Zhalfir. His idea was, we're just going to blink these things out of existence. We're going to keep them gone until all this shit's blown over, then we'll bring them back. We keep our home safe, screw everybody else. So that led to cards like the Moat, because that's him just, I mean, he took out ground and all. Just, this continent, gone. Well, see, there's problems when you start messing with time, and all of this Rath has been overlaid on top of Dominar. You got Teferi doing his weird stuff. So you've got problems. Now, the invasion happens, the apocalypse, all Urza finally has all the pieces together, everything culminates, and when you get all of the pieces of the legacy together, it forms the legacy weapon. So inside this legacy weapon, here we are at the last battle. This is the end of the storyline. End. And so, I mean, you've got all these other characters that help in the storyline, except for Sabo. She was a bad guy. So I'm going to go ahead and throw Hannah's custody there, too, because I overlooked that. She obviously guards the legacy she protects. But, so you get all the pieces on the legacy, and you're like, this is it. We're going to fly into the last battle. And a lot of people get off. The only people that stay on the ship is Gerard, because he has to. He realizes he is the biological piece of the legacy. Karn's on there. Keep in mind, Karn has Urza's head inside his chest, and they go off, and they fight the good fight, and Kerplosion in the sky. There's a little moment afterwards down below where, like, you know, everybody's like, oh, Jared's gone, Karn's gone, blah, blah. Well, obviously Karn's not gone. That explosion with Urza's, the most powerful planeswalker ever's head in your chest, obviously pushed Karn over. It gave him a spark and ignited it. By the way, Karn's the only artificial that we know of, artificial life form to have a spark. Artificial creatures can't have sparks, by the way, naturally. So there won't be any, like, angel, you know, because angels are artificial beings in Magic. But, hell, Karn had it twice. He got Urza's and Venser's, so damn. So, now, obviously, all of this has had an impact on Dominaria. Bad things happen when there's this much. I mean, we've been through the Ice Age, we've been through the Brothers' War, we've been through this apocalypse thing, Rath has been overlaid, all this bad shit's going wrong. Time rifts start happening. Now, the legacy weapon is meant to end the storyline, and then we go to, like, a bunch of different other planes. So, and they say the storyline's over, but it's not. What happened here on Dominaria has a ripple effect throughout all of the multiverse. In Kamigawa, it allowed that which was the baby to be stolen, that which was taken, because Cedar Kondo is actually tied into the story. He raised Gerard, and Gerard's half-brother Vuel, who became Volrath. Yeah, all this stuff starts coming into... it affected Ravnica in the way that it would not let the spirits rest, so the spirits were inhabiting the same realm as the living. It just... So we come back to this storyline in Time Spiral. And in Time Spiral, weird shit's happening. Shit is just start popping up out of the past. Things that have been extinct or dead just start popping out of the past. And that's because these time rifts are just random all over. Now, Teferi figures this shit out, and he's like, and he's got Jorah now, and they're like, these time rifts are happening over these sites, over Zhalfir, and so he figures out a way to seal the time rifts because he realizes if he doesn't, Dominaria is going to break apart and just pretty much explode or implode or whatever. And if Dominaria goes, the whole multiverse goes. I.e., that's bad. So, he has to find a way to fix it. He does, but it requires the sacrifice of your Planeswalker Spark to seal a rift. Now, he gladly gives up his. I don't remember which rift he seals, either his homelands or Jorah's homeland. The one above their rift, he brings them back because he realizes that was part of the problem. He feels kind of somewhat personally responsible. He talks to a lot of the other Planeswalkers. Keep in mind, these are godlike Planeswalkers still. And this event is known as the mending, which is important. So a lot of these other Planeswalkers give up their spark to close the rifts. Everything gets back to normal-ish. Now, here's the thing. Because of this, any remaining Planeswalkers that there were, because of the magnitude of the time rifts and what all has happened on Dominaria, their Planeswalker abilities were subdued. They lost a ton of power. Why, you ask? Why did they lose a ton of power? Because what happens after Future Sight? We have Lorwyn, which gives us the Planeswalker cards. Now, you can't print cards of Planeswalkers how they were in the old days. You can't do it. It was too powerful. I mean, we won't have an Urza Planeswalker. I'm fine with that. We might get it like a version, but we won't get the true Urza and what all he can do. Those were too powerful. Too powerful beings to represent in cards. So what Wizards had to do, we're taking a tangent here, what Wizards had to do is to power down Planeswalkers because they wanted to print Planeswalker cards. Planeswalker cards actually almost made it into Future Sight, but they weren't ready, they weren't tweaked enough, so they pushed them back to Lorwyn. That's why you're like, why the hell are these Planeswalkers in Lorwyn? Anyway, so they had to find a way to power down. So this entire story was to power down Planeswalkers. Now, there were a few Planeswalkers left. Most notably the ones that we know of, Liliana Vess, she's old as hell, and Nicol Bolas. Nicol Bolas has spent everything since, all through Alara Block and Conflux, where we finally got the Bolas Planeswalker, has spent all of this time trying to get back to his former power. Nicol Bolas is actually the oldest living being in the multiverse. He's the first Planeswalker. He is was the most powerful. Now, we have formed the Justice League, yes, and sometimes that story is a little trying because, you know, we got super friends and they're going off and they're beating the bad guy. But to be honest with you, they've really only beaten one bad guy. The Eldrazi was just 3 different ones. But anyway, I'm glad the squirrely noodle arms are gone. So now they're off on a Amonkhet trying to find and beat Nicol Bolas. Now, that didn't work so well the last time when they did it in the Alara Block. Ajani has gone to go get some help. We don't know who he's getting. I'm guessing he's either getting Karn or he's getting Ugin. Because I believe Ugin may have a little score set up with Nicol Bolas. So, And I don't think there's any end to this storyline. I think they can actually keep coming back and revisiting and just, this is because of this. One day, we will probably go back to Dominaria. Although now it's Dominaria / Rath. Because I've never heard of Rath going away. I mean, Rath got overlaid on top of Dominaria, so you've got Dominaria, which is the largest plane in the multiverse, and it's got Flowstone, Rath laid over the top of it. Interesting to see how they'll do that. The Phyrexians are not dead. The Phyrexians are, the only thing that keeps them in check is the fact that they cannot planeswalk. But Tezzeret can. Tezzeret has this portal, the planar bridge, which is essentially the same thing as the planar portal from way back. But, they already had a planar portal. And Tezzeret works for Bolas. Now, every set that comes out, I look through the artifacts, I look through the art to see if I can find just a little bit of glistening oil. Because what a lot of people don't realize, I didn't realize it at the time in Mirrodin, way back in original Mirrodin, they hinted at the Phyrexians. Because when they come up with Metal World, and of course we all know that the Planeswalker Karn created Mirrodin out of the Mirari. And if you'll look back in some of those Mirrodin cards, you'll see specks of Phyrexian oil. They planted it that long ago. These people work this far ahead. It's very clever. I love the creative team. They do a hell of a job. And so it was no surprise. When we all saw Mirrodin, we were like, wow, this would be Phyrexia's wet dream. And I think the whole point in having Phyrexia take over Mirrodin and call it New Phyrexia is to get another return, which I think we're probably due for, because it's been a while since we've had Scars of Mirrodin. And I think we're going to go back, have that, Return to Jedi moment to where, Mirrodin's for Mirrodin thing, to make Mirrodin great again. Which, by the way, I think I need to make Zendikar great again, too. But we didn't go back to Zendikar. We went back to Rise of the Eldrazi. Different story. So, the Phyrexians are not dead. The Phyrexians are... We have a couple of pinnacle enemies. Bad guys. It is Nicol Bolas. It is Phyrexia. And we have a new world that now it's not... Kaladesh is not made of metal, but it's certainly with the Inventor's Fair and the Ether Reserves and all of that stuff, it does kind of invite. I'm really curious to see what Phyrexia would do with all that ether, how they would incorporate it into their being. So, I don't think we've seen the last of them. Now, do I think that Nicol Bolas is going to work with the Phyrexians? No. Neither one of them have any interest beyond their own. What is more powerful? I think Phyrexia, just because of the sheer numbers factor. But Nicol Bolas is a badass, and I do appreciate y'all watching. I do apologize. We're at 48 minutes. This is I think this was longer than the damn box or the case bust, but there's a lot of words, a lot of shit to talk about, and I could have talked about more. There's a lot of cards that are not in here. I do appreciate y'all watching. As I said, this is the 100th deck. I don't know this is going to be a powerhouse deck. It will be fun, though. I promise you that, and that's what it's about. I do appreciate y'all watching, but right now, it's time to shuffle and cut.